Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 6 of My Story, My Strength Challenge. This is a journey, again, that I created for myself to take back my healing. But I share each day hoping it helps someone realize that healing is possible for them, even when it does feel impossible. So before we begin, I want to issue a trigger warning. Today's episode includes parental abuse, false accusations, neglect, and youth homelessness. If you're not in the right space to hear that right now, please come back when you are ready. Your safety and your healing will always come first. Okay, so today, like I said, I want to talk about my mom. I know you guys heard a couple of things throughout this week um, that would suggest that she probably wasn't the best at what she did for his parenting. But this is, something specifically about her, not something that she did through someone else. My mother, she's had her own trauma. She's dealt with things her entire life that she's never really seeked a lot of help for. And when I was younger, she wasn't always like how she is now. When I was younger, she didn't drink as much. Um, and while she did have her favorites, she did. She was okay. It was over time when things changed after my biological father passed away and who was her abuser. And, she started to drink a lot more. And, so it didn't start off that way. Um, this is one of the stories where I felt like she let me down a lot, where she showed genuinely how much she thought little of me. um, so I ran away. I used to run away from home a lot because I was getting tired of the abuse. So I'm going to say around late 13, early 14, I started to run away from home because, she did get a little out of control with beating on me. She was really bad with it. She would drink and she would just lose herself and she didn't really understand. I don't know if she understood or not, but she was doing more than what my body could handle. So I started to run away from home to try to kind of be safe. So I would bounce back and forth between the streets and when home because the streets weren't safe. Sometimes I had places to go. Sometimes I had to sleep in the streets. Sometimes things happened that I couldn't really process why I was going through that at the time. So I sometimes felt like it was safer to be at home than it was in the street. So technically, I didn't really have anywhere safe to go. It was just like the lesser of two evils at that time. So I would bounce between the streets and home. But on this particular day, I was living in an abandoned house. Well, around this time, I was living in an abandoned house, and I was surrounded by a bunch of men, grown men. We were all selling drugs out of the house because I didn't have any other way to survive. So a guy said, "Here, if you want to live here, you have to make your own way." And I had to do what I had to do. It was either that or sell my body, and I wasn't going to do that. So I was in this abandoned house where I slept, and even though I'm in a house with a bunch of men, you know, they were still grown men. I was a young girl, and they weren't always some people I felt safe around. And there was a guy who I grew up with who was around a lot of the times when I first moved into that place, and he would keep me safe, but he stopped coming around as much. So I felt vulnerable. I felt afraid, and I knew I had to leave. So I tried to go home. When I got there, the door was locked. It's usually unlocked, but today, or however long she had the door locked, windows locked, everything was like I couldn't get in. And my sister, she let me in. My mom was home, and she was already drunk because it was her day off. Every time she was off, she started drinking first thing in the morning. By the midday, she was completely done. So she was already done for the day. Um, and she called me into her room, and she accused me of stealing money from her. And I was just like, you know, I didn't steal anything from you. Not to say that as a child we didn't steal 5, 10, no more than $20 at one point because she would get drunk. She wouldn't buy food. It's not that we didn't grow up poor. We didn't grow up in a poverty type setting, but she would forget because she was so focused on drinking. She would forget that she would just she accused me of causing her a panic attack because of the amount of money that was stolen and the fact that she had to be put in the hospital. And I was just like, what do you mean? Because I don't know what you're talking about. And I acknowledge, yes, I probably took $10 or $20 when you left it on the floor here and there when you were passed out. But me and my sisters, we all did this. It was just so that we could eat. But again, it was never more than $20. But this time she said no. It was more than $20, and I know you stole my money. And I'm like, Mom, I haven't been home in weeks, maybe even a month or so. And she knew that I hadn't been there. I tried to explain to her. I told her the truth. I told her I was staying in a place in an abandoned house with all of these men who were trying to take advantage of me, and that I only ran away from home because she kept beating me, and I couldn't deal with it anymore. It's like one of the few times I tried to speak up for myself. I told her that I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave. I actually, could I stay home? Mom, please let me stay home. I'm scared. I don't have anywhere to go. But she didn't care. She told me just get out. She didn't let me grab any of my clothes. She didn't even allow me to make a sandwich. Um, and when I was pleading with her, Mom, please let me stay. I don't want to go. She got up to attack me, you know. But I backed out of reach, and I just kind of walked out of the front door with nothing. But my sister, she did kind of grab some clothes, stuck it in the backpack, and she gave it to me through the back door. So I took what I could, and then I did. I left, and I just kind of walked the streets all night, too afraid to sit down anywhere because every time I did, something bad could happen to me. Because again, I've been living off and on in the streets for right about this time, maybe a year, year and a half, and I knew what could happen. I didn't have anywhere to go. So I just kind of walked around till the sun came up so that I could just go to school, so that I can have something to eat, have somewhere safe to sit for a few hours, and just rest my feet. But to this day, my mom, she will still accuse me of stealing all that money. And I still tell her, I'm like, it wasn't me. It was not me. You know, um, I don't steal. And she just wanted to find a reason to make me into this bad person, like to the point where she'll tell my family all these bad things about me, including the fact that I stole her money. And it's like, I was never here. You have no actual proof. Like, she's never really had evidence. She just thought it was me, so it was me. And of course, let's go the feelings that I had. Of course, I had negative. Like my mom, she hates me. She thinks the worst of me. I felt like my mom hated me. I still feel like my mom thinks the worst of me, because even talking to her now, that's the first thing she does is start accusing. Um, Another thing I felt was, no matter how honest I am, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't lie, but no matter how honest I am, it doesn't matter, because people are going to believe what they want. And if my own mom, that's another feeling. If my own mom won't believe me, who will? Who will? I by this time I'm being getting called wise about everything, about being sexually assaulted when I lost my virginity, about stealing her money, about being beat. She would tell people that I was lying about her beating me. Like, so another feeling I had was, I must really be a bad person for my own mom to think this way about me. I must really be a bad person. Um, and then the last thing I felt negatively about is it's safer in the streets than it is in my own home. But that was really saying a lot, because it was not safe for me on those streets. So my reflection question for you guys today is, have you ever been blamed for something that you didn't do? And how did this impact your sense of self-worth or your relationships? So has anyone ever blamed you for something, like, I know you did it, and you're like, no, and how did that impact your sense of self-worth? How did it impact your relationships with that person or those individuals? Because with me, it was just like, it was horrible. So I had to reframe that. So um, I had to reframe being mistreated or misunderstood. So being mistreated or misunderstood doesn't mean that I deserved it. It meant the people who were responsible were too wounded to see my truth. I didn't do it, but she was too wounded to see that maybe someone else took it. Maybe she lost it. She had to find someone to blame, and that person was me. I was misunderstood. I did not deserve the way I was treated. She was the one that was responsible. She came in every night drunk. She threw her money on the floor. There's no telling who was in and out of her house. Like I told you, she never kept the door. We never kept our doors unlocked. And a lot of people, friends, people, family, anyone knew that. And when she's drunk, passed out, she's out. So, her wounds, that was not a reflection of my truth. So, for my affirmation, I am not what they accused me. I'm not what they accused me of. I am worthy, honest, and resilient. My truth matters even if they never acknowledge it. Because to this day, she still will accuse me of that. And that did bother me for a long time. It did. And I was just like, at some point, I had to just stop caring. Like, whatever. I don't care. I didn't steal it. And there's nothing that you're going to say that's going to make that true. So, how I coped, like a mini session, coping skill. Sorry, today is a busy day. It's Friday. So, you're going to hear a lot. So, write the unsent letter. Write a letter to someone who blamed or hurt you, even if you never send it. Let out every word that you've ever swallowed, everything that you've ever kept to yourself, and say exactly what you needed to say back then. Make sure that you write it as honestly as you can, even if you have to be angry about it. However, it makes you feel, write your truth and practice self forgiveness. Stand in the mirror and say, I forgive myself for the ways I survived. Do this even when you don't fully believe it yet. Your nervous system needs to hear that from you. It needs to understand, because right now your body, again, on my show, Insights of a Survivor, on my podcast that airs Fridays, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, I believe a week or two ago, I talked about Stockholm Syndrome and how your body and your brain and your nervous system kind of learn certain habits to protect yourself, to survive. So you need to reframe all of that. You need to unlearn all of the negative and relearn the positive. So your nervous system needs to hear that you forgive yourself for the ways you needed to survive every day, every day. Because a lot of things that we do is we blame ourselves and we don't forgive ourselves for things that we had to do. So again, look at yourself in the mirror. This is a 1-minute challenge that I'm challenging you now. I survived what should have destroyed me. Look at yourself in the mirror again. Y'all know my mirror's right there. I survived what should have destroyed me. I was never the problem. I was the proof of strength. Repeat that 3 times with me. I'm going to say it 3 times. Ready? I survived what should have destroyed me. I was never the problem. I was the proof of strength. I survived what should have destroyed me. I was never the problem. I was proof of strength. I was the proof of strength. Last time. I survived what should have destroyed me. I was never the problem. I was the proof of strength. And every time you say it, repeat it louder and firmer each time. Take back that control. So now we are at our survivor spotlight section of this challenge, and I want to point out a guy. I know I always talk about women, women, women. Men are victims and survivors as well. It's not just women. And one person, I actually learned about this person, and a lot of us probably have too, is by the movie Antoine Fisher, the Antoine Fisher story. And I didn't realize when I watched the movie that that was based on an actual true story. So when I realized that, I looked into that, and he is a lot like us. He was a survivor. Antoine Fisher was born in an Ohio prison to a teenage mother and a father who had been killed before he was born. So he was already born into a world where he had to struggle and fight. And I know a lot about that. Having to fight from birth is not fun. From the moment he entered the world, he was surrounded by instability, abandonment, and loss. After being placed in foster care, he spent much of his childhood in a home where he suffered horrific abuse, physical, emotional, and sexual. And for over a decade, he was beaten, neglected, and dehumanized, while those who were meant to protect him and look after him, they kind of looked the other way. And it's really sad. It's hard. Eventually, Antoine was removed from the abusive household and cycled through multiple group homes. Homelessness kind of followed after that, and again, a lot of us understand that. Some of us feel like it's safer to be in the streets than it is to be in the homes where we were being abused. As a teenager, he often slept in cars or on the streets, clinging to survival in a world that had given up on him and who had given up on him in every way. And he had every reason to give up on himself. But Antoine held on to something deeper. He held on to something that he longed for, and that was to find his place in the world and to tell his story no matter how painful. He joined the U.S. Navy at 18 years old, and it was there that he began to find stability and comfort from his trauma. Encouraged by his therapist, Antoine began to write. And what started as a journal became a screenplay, then a memoir. His book, Finding Fish, and then the film, Antoine Fisher, directed by Denzel Washington, because I did see that movie, and he was in that movie too, brought his harrowing childhood and triumphant growth to a global audience. So he was able to express and show the world what he had overcome, not show the world what he went through, what he had overcome. Antoine found healing in telling his truth and in helping others to recognize the possibility of their own transformation. So, Mr. Antoine Fisher, you didn't just survive the unthinkable. You turned that's your story into one that awakened empathy and offered hope. Your journey from a foster child to a filmmaker gave a voice to those like me who were still living in silence. By confronting your pain head on and by refusing to be defined by it, you empowered countless of others to rise beyond their wounds and reclaim their worth. So I would like to thank you so much personally from me for being one of the people who made it possible for me not to be ashamed of my life and not to be ashamed of the things that happened to me and not to allow those things to define me. So that is the end of day 6, my story, my strength. And if this message spoke to you, if it says something to you, don't keep it deep in you. Don't keep it to yourself. Comment, share, tag someone who needs to know that they're not alone. Please subscribe to my channel, Empowered Voices, Finding Strength in Survivors. And make sure you're here with me tomorrow. We're not just surviving, we're reclaiming our voices day by day. And I'm going to say this every day. Your story doesn't have to end in pain. It begins in power. So I'll see you tomorrow for day 7. I love you guys. Stay strong. Mwah.